Yo yo, what up dogs? Chris with another Patreon exclusive tutorial for you today. We're being blessed by the boys in blue, everyone's favourite poster boys. Insert ridiculous and redonkulously overdone Smurf references here. Leave it at guys, the Ultramarines are cool, you just don't like to admit it. This Ballistic Dreadnought is for a client that I was really excited to paint up and film. I wanted to show the process on how I paint Dreadnoughts in general, so whether they're Ultramarines Ballistic Dreadnoughts, or a Leviathan Dreadnought for the Iron Warriors in the 31st Millennium, or any brand of Boxnaut, Contemptor, Leviathan, most mechanical monsters, even up to Imperial Knights, most of the ways I approach this model is how I will approach similar beasties and Gargants and Lords of War in the 41st Millennium and beyond. So without further ado, let's get this Cobalt boy down and show you how to go about planning your own Dreadnought projects to make them look amazing, get them done quick, and with minimal effort whatsoever. So, starting as I always do, black by Colourforge and then a really strong white Zenithal. You can see it's almost entirely white, but the underside and the nooks and crannies and undercrackers are still very, very dark. I went a bit different actually. I went black and then I went for Tempest Blue, which is Colourforge's alternative to Cantor Blue. And then Zenithal it, just to see if a little blue undertone will help out at all. But otherwise, I'm happy with that. We're going to open up with some contrast airbrushing. You can do this with a brush. I'm going to do it with an airbrush just because I got the time and the means to do it. Aziman Blue, this is how I get that really rich cobalt blue. So Ultramarines are many different shades of blue. In the Heresy, they're referred to as cobalt. In the 41st Millennium, they're a very subdued ultramarine blue. I wanted to push that and have this really nice, cartoony, almost pearlescent blue finish. This whole process in painting this Dreadnought made me constantly think about Assault on Black Reach, which was the first Games Workshop 40k starter set I bought. The Orcs and the Space Marines in there, and the big Boxnaut. And I just really like the old school approach of the old Rogue Trader and Visions of Heresy, where all the colours are turned up to all the colours turned up to 10 and super bright, super vibrant. I think it's a lot of fun, and painting is a great deal of fun as well. So I'm going to airbrush this all over. I'm not worrying about getting it on the metallics or what's going to be metal later. I'm just going to apply this so it's a nice even finish with a little bit of pearlescent focus from the white undercoat on the top end of each panel. Now when painting Dreadnoughts and similar Urks too, we start with the predominant colour first, which in this case is going to be the blue. If it's a World Eater in 30k, it's going to be white. If it's an Imperial Fist in any setting, it's going to be yellow. It just makes sense for the majority strength colour to be done first. We then fill in the other bits around it, also ensuring that the deepest recessed colours, which in this case will be blue in the sarcophagus, are done early on to save us having to fanny about and make mistakes later. Once again, using an airbrush, dirt quick, dirt cheap, wonderful. If you don't have an airbrush, you can do this by brush, or alternatively just rattle can it with a bright blue. It's entirely up to you. Now we're going to do some sexy stuff. We've got some masking tape here, which is 13, 14 mil, give or take. And we're going to apply that over the blue once it's completely dry so we don't tear it. And then all we're going to do is take this back outside and give it a dusting of the white. And this is a dead easy way to get stripes. You can mix this up and paint it white, put this down, then spray it blue. Invert the colour however you want, and we're just going to really nice and gently peel this. Oh, it's a bit nice, isn't it? We do like a little bit of peel, don't we, guys? Lovely. Now, there's some slight blemishes you can see. That's because this is old tape I've reused. I don't care. It's going to get scuffed and weathered anyway. Nothing to worry about. So that's on there. That's going to add a nice little secondary colour to balance between the blue and the metals. Let's carry on as we go. Olive Flesh from Pro Acryl. This is going to be used on the purity seals, the scroll work, the nameplates, anything that's not going to be blue or metallic basically. I'm going to apply this over all those areas in 2 thin coats to get a nice solid finish. This is a really great colour. It's almost like a slightly warmer Rakkar flesh. Pro Acryl paints are just great in general, and this is a really nice go-to for bone, scroll work, paper, anything really, anything that you need to be a neutral bony colour. Now you might be wondering why we're doing this now, we're not doing the metallics and the next main colour, which is going to be the metals. I'm going to save those afterwards because we're going to build up our main non-metallic colours. We're going to get those transferred, weathered and nicely matted down to a really nice smooth finish. Then come in with our metallics. The reason we do that is because then we get a clear distinction between the two textures, which is our armor panels and our metallics. Bold Pyro Red from Procure, we're going to use this on the wax seals of the Purity seals. You can see just how bright and punchy this colour is. It's one of my favourites. He's got a few of these blighters on. Don't forget to get them completely filled in, the sides, the tops. God, look how bright this guy is already. How wicked is that? Grimdark, my arse. Black Legion. We're going to use this for the missile firing compartment. I was debating being neat here so that we could paint the missiles with a yellow contrast, and then did this and thought, fuck it, I'll just paint the whole fucking thing black. Know when to be messy. We can be messy now because we're going to paint these missiles later. Don't worry, it'll be reet. So, makes sense now to save time, be messy, and get all that filled in with some Black Legion. Contrast paint. This is a great example of why this paint's great, because it's almost like repriming something. So if you've sprayed a model that's going to be majoritively white, then want some black details, chuck some Black Legion over it. It fills in the colour great, and it's also nice and thin because it's a contrast paint. Do love. Mercuric Blue, we're going to use this to tidy up any mistakes we've got. So I overspilled a little bit here on the olive flesh, which is going to neatly fill in those mistakes. It's not an identical colour match, but because it's darker, it's not going to be as noticeable as if it were lighter. So if you're tidying up mistakes over bright armour, going with a darker colour, the base colour, even a brown to simulate weathering or muck, just don't go in with a super bright colour because it'll look disjointed and a little bit strange. Up next, we've got some Iraqi Army Sand from AK. We're going to paint the missiles with this. We could go in and paint them yellow straight away, but we're not psychopaths who want to do a million layers of yellow, so we're just going to do this paint and do some contrast. This, like Olive Flesh, is a beautiful paint. It goes on in 1 or 2 coats. It's really, really nice and easy to thin. It's a little bit warmer than the Olive Flesh, so again, it gives us that differentiation of texture between these and the scroll work in the Purity seals. At this point, I thought, why am I doing it when it's attached? Let's take it off, it'd be much easier. So going around the whole missile, the top, the bottom, the sides, make sure we don't miss any. Ready for when we contrast it shortly. Contrast. We've got some Imperial Fist here, which is an actual godsend for painting anything yellow. And again, now that Olive's dry, we're just going to go in and paint these missiles with this colour. Again, make sure we get all of it, top, bottom, sides. Don't miss any of it. Right, with that, your Dreadnought's done. Nah, I'm taking a piss. We've done all our base layers, our non-metallic base layers, so now we're going to go on to the next step, which is giving it a gloss varnish, ready for transfers. So remember I said earlier, we're going to do all the metallics once we've finished all our base layers which aren't metallic, to ensure we get a nice separation between metallic and non-metallic surfaces. So we're going to give this a really nice light dusting with this gloss varnish, focusing on the armour panels where our transfers are going to go. But at the end of the day, it makes sense just to dust it all over because we are going to be oil washing and varnishing the whole thing at some point. So don't worry about being stringent on just the armour panels. Give it a light dust all over. Again, we don't want to drown it. We don't want to make the whole thing look like it's a shiny, wet mess. We just want to do this so it dusts and protects the surfaces, but also gives us a smooth panel for us to apply our transfers onto, and some capillary action assistance when we do our oil washes. Transfers, I love them. Micro Set, Micro Sol, Miracle Juice. Micro Set is number 1, the blue. Micro Sol is number 2, the red. Give 'em a rattle. My Micro Set is nearly finished. Rest in peace, gone but never forgotten. Now we can start thinking about what transfers we want to do. So we need to think about a couple of things: placement, size, colour. Our blue transfers are going to be very similar to the colour we've got, which is fine. We've got some generic numbers there in case we want to do anything non-ultramarine specific. Once we've got a general idea of what we want and where it's going to go, we measure up our panel alongside the transfer. If you need to use a tape measure, use a tape measure, it's fine. Then start cutting out the transfers you want to use. So using a sharp scalpel here on my cutting mat, like a big brave boy, not getting my fingers caught, I'm going to start cutting out our transfers. Transfers these days, especially the new ones from Citadel and Games Workshop, are brilliant. They are hard-wearing, they are tough, they adhere beautifully, they come off the paper really, really quickly with a little bit of moisture. If they fold, you can quickly save them. I've had a lot of struggle trying to tear them, even when I wanted to cut a transfer off a model that was already on there, or cut it to shape on something I was trying to adhere it to. They're good stuff now. The olden days of it collapsing as soon as it gets wet are seemingly long behind us. Long may it rain. So I've laid them out in how I want them to be placed. So I've got my 2 arms either side and a general middle section which reflects where on the Dreadnought these transfers are going to go. So with that, I've got an idea of where the colour balance is going to be, where the iconography is going to go. He's an Ultramarine, he's going to have U's on him. There's names, there's designations, there's company markings. So now we're going to get our micro set and get these transfers all nice and soggy. So I got the tip of my finger in my clean water pot and just drop the water straight onto the transfers on my cutting board. We want to make sure the water hits the top of it and gets underneath to the paper behind it. Once that's soft, that's what allows the transfer to come off. Do be careful because they will come off very, very quickly. So if you put water on it, leave it, and then go to put more on it, it may attach to your finger. There we go, get them nice and sodden, nice and soppy. The bigger ones you can just dunk in the water and put straight on the mat. But normally a fingerful of water does the trick. If you're working with the large transfers like the Forge World sheets on going onto the side of Lamb Raiders and Rhinos, dunk them in the water. Last thing you want to do is have it weak one side and tough the other so it tears. There we go. I've tried to make sure they're in a relative situation where they were so I know what transfer is going where and on what appendage and location on the Dreadnought. We then apply our micro set to the surface our transfer is going onto. We check to see if the transfer is ready to come off the paper by wiggling it with our brush. This one feels like it's there. I feather my brush underneath it in a sideways motion. Gently take it off the paper. Think about where I'm going to position it. I did want this central. However, there's not enough room because of those stupid fucking purity seals. Who put those on there, honestly? So I'm going to leave it to the side. That's fine. We can work with it. And again, we're going to use our micro set once it's on there. From the center of the transfer out, feather that on there. This helps it adhere nice and smooth. It softens the transfer so it's less likely to tear and come away. And it helps provide us with a nice finish on there, ready for what we're going to do later. Up next, we're going to move on to this top segment, and Shock Horror, it's Ultramar. He's going to have an Ultramar on there. The longer, thinner transfers can be a bit more of a pain. They are more at risk of folding in on themselves, being a general pain in the arse. So just try and be gentle, lift it up from one end, and then move the model, not the transfer, to try and get it into position. So I got that quite awry initially, but thankfully because these transfers are so hard wearing and the set is helping us keep them fluid in motion, we can get that way we want it to be without risking any transfer damage. So constantly moving it around, make sure it looks like it's in a good place. We want it to be as parallel and as symmetrical and natural looking as possible. I dare say Ultramarines will be anally retentive about their honour markings and chapter markings on their revered Holy Warrior Dreadnoughts. And then we've got these really nice kind of ancient Greek patterns which always look nice on a big flat panel, I think. So we're going to have this on top there. Now we've got a lot of white on the other shoulder, so the more white transfers we have on here, the more it balances out. So get that parallel with the Ultramar we've got, again parallel with the armour panel lines. It's a little bit longer than the panel as we'd need it, but that's fine. We can always fold it around and take it off or weather it later if we need to. And again, make sure it's sitting flat. Any bubbles or air pockets, we're going to gently feather out with our brush from the centre of the transfer out. That looks pretty good. Right, here he is all transferred up. I've added some to the other arm, I've added some to his body, his legs, his little name banners. There we go, I'm happy with all of those. I think he looks absolutely dashing. What a dude. I popped a red skull on the inside of that transfer to make him look like he's more of a big boss. It's kind of more of a sign of an honour marking. That transfer is feathered around to the side of the armour. I'm not going to worry about that. I can weather that in later or take it off if I need to. We're now going to go to our micro sole, which we're going to apply over our transfers to secure them into place for good. Now, this stuff will reactivate the transfer and could lead it to move, so we're going to very carefully, as best we can, from the centre of the transfer out, feather this to cover it, get underneath it, and help it adhere smoothly to the surface and stay put and soften to the point where it looks painted on. If we go in from the side central, we risk it going underneath, tearing, moving, pain in the arse. Don't want to do this stupid hobby anymore. I'm going to take up fishing. So again, centre of the transfer out with this stuff. This stuff dries a lot quicker than the micro set. You need to leave the micro set to dry for at least an hour, I find. Overnight's ideal, but an hour minimum. Unless it's a hot day, in which case, as long as the sun allows. This stuff tends to dry a lot quicker, I assume, because of the pH balance in it. So again, all over, being very careful of this transfer because I don't want to move it because it is a transfer on top of another transfer. I want to try and remember the position of it where I can keep it parallel with, so the top of its skull just sticks out the U symbol. If it moves a little bit, as long as I can have it looking as central as can be, I don't mind. So long as it's adhered to the surface and this stuff does what it needs to do, we're all good. See, I moved it, mass cursing, mass swearing. Dark Lords were summoned with the oaths I uttered against this Dreadnought. But it's fine, I'm going to gently feather it back into place. Exactly where I need it. Oh, it looks even better. God, I'm good. There we go, leave that to dry, and here we are. What a handsome chappy. A true son of Ultramar he bloody is. Now, I have yet to see a Dreadnought or a model where too many transfers have been applied. You really can go whole hog. If you want to cover every inch of blue panel with a transfer, go mad, I'd love to see it. From here, we're going to weather those transfers in with some Crag Blue and a bit of Case Sponge. So we're doing this before we apply any matte varnish or weathering because we want to tie it in and make it look more aged. So we're just going to gently dab this so it looks like the paint that the transfer is consisting of on top of the blue armour has come away and chipped and had a little bit of rough and tumble. Sparingly as you can be. It's very easy to overdo this and ruin a transfer and ruin the whole effect, so less is more. If you think you need to add more, don't. Applying this over the whole Dreadnought, over all his transfers on the blue armour. Not going to do the ones on his name badges and stuff, because they're not blue. I am being gentle here, you don't need to push down very hard for this stuff. We're also going to do this over the white to look like the white's been painted over the blue. So the blue paint underneath has been, the white paint's been damaged and the blue paint underneath is showing through. We're now going to do some scuff highlights with faded ultramarine blue. This is a lovely paint from Pro using our medium shade, large shade brush from Citadel, sorry, which ironically is a fantastic dry brush and highlighting brush. This is how I highlight vehicles. I load the brush up and take most of it away and then gently dab it and scrape it alongside the sharper edges of armor panels. We get a really nice natural finish. It's a scratchy, inconsistent look, which is perfect for a realistic, war-torn, battle-damaged aesthetic. I'm going to apply this over all the areas, all the sharp panels of armor, any right angles basically, and any sharp edges, just gently dabbing it along like this. You can then stipple this on in small areas, in circular motions, really gentle little dabs on the flat panels, just to again simulate paint chipping coming away, which again ties your transfers further into the paint on the model. This is a superb alternative to edge highlighting every single surface, nook and cranny, as Games Workshop tell you to do. They don't tell you to do it, but it's how they do it. And it's a lot more fun, and it's a lot more, I find, realistic, and a lot more satisfying for a model when it's finished, making it look like it's absolutely been haggard on the battlefield and just wants to put its robotic feet up and rest on its robotic armchair and have all its little mates come and ask it to tell its stories. Now, similar to weathering, less is more with that. You don't want to overdo it, but here we are, that's all done now. He's looking super fly. We've got that nice battle damaged white there. We've got our blue armour that's all nicely scuffed and a little bit torn. On to the next bit, which is Russian dark brown. We're going to use this to apply some mud chipping. Again with the sponge. Chris, all you do is weather your models. Yeah, I fucking like it. Deal with it. And I'm going to do a similar thing to what we've done now, which is going to apply this gently over sharp edges, transfers, flat panels, really light, really sporadically, turning the sponge as we go so we don't have matching and consistent patterns. And again, this just adds another colour, another bit of interest, and a little bit more of a realistic war-torn finish to the armour. Once again, we've not done any metallic so far. We're going to save those for the end after we've done our oil washes and matte varnished all this armour down to look the absolute part. Now, we've not weathered the missile compartment or the missiles because, thinking of it logically for a science fiction universe 40,000 years in the future where mankind's a pseudo-fascist empire exterminating all life that isn't human, it makes sense in terms of mechanics to replace components that get used or depleted regularly. This includes moving parts, legs, ankles, joints, pistons, but most importantly for a Space Marine, weapons. He is going to fire those missiles and they're going to get changed. The Tech Marine's going to come and take the loader out and clean it and disassemble it, put it back together and repair it and put it back. So it would make sense that there is less wear and tear on those weapons unless it's close combat, because they would get regularly seen to by the Tech Marines in the field of battle to ensure he can still do what he needs to do. Ancient Brother Darren, we'll call him, is not going to be happy if his missile launcher packs up in the middle of the fight and Tech Marine Julian comes along and gets an airfall from his big robotic friend because he's firing blanks. Happens to us all, mate, especially at your age. So that's why I'm not weathering the weapon compartment as much as I am the rest of the Dreadnought. Plus, I'm going to paint it some more later anyway. But again, thinking about this in a semi-realistic, it's a fucking game of toy soldiers, in a semi-realistic sense of narrative that the weapons get fired and replaced and used most regularly, and therefore cycle through a lot quicker than any other part of a Space Marines armament. If that makes sense, it might just be waffle. Apologies if it doesn't make sense. I am a moron. Back again with the gloss. We're going to dust it all over again, as we did before, ensuring we get everywhere on this Dreadnought now because we are getting ready to apply some oils. Don't worry about the metallics or the base. Again, focusing on the armor panels, getting into all those nooks and crannies, ready for that sweet and messy and super awesome and reliable oil wash we're going to apply. Dust it all over, leave to dry for at least an hour, maybe less in the sun if it's a Scorchio day, which it has been here recently. Bish bash bosh. Oil me up, baby! We've got our burnt sienna and our burnt umber and our vile, disgusting dish that we're going to mix it in. Do as I say, not as I do. Clean your dishes. We're going to mix 1 part brown and 1 part sienna with a pipette and a bit of spirits to form our mucky oil wash. This is going to be applied all over the armour of the Dreadnought and is going to help us get a realistic, grimy finish on the armour, at which point we can then matte varnish it all down and then move on to our metallics. So give this a really good mix. Use a scatty old brush that you despise the existence of because it's so haggard and vile. Those make the perfect oil wash brushes because these will wreck your nice brushes. Do not use your nice brushes. You will get told off by Brush Father Christmas if he exists. There we go, that's looking nice and thinned. And then all we're going to do, fairly messily, with very little finesse and care, apply this over to all the armour of our Dreadnought. Anything we painted up to now is going to get this on there. So you'll see, because of the gloss varnish, the capillary reaction hits and flows and dissipates massively. It goes into all those nooks and crannies and surfaces and instantly gives us a nice depth recess of mucky, grimy goodness. So again, we're going to apply this over all the parts of the Dreadnought we have painted deliberately up to this point. Don't worry about the bits that we're going to paint metal, we're going to do those in a bit. There's a common misconception that white spirits and the application of those to your models will wreck and remove your paint. It won't. The gloss helps with this, but also it won't happen unless you're going at it with a really stiff abrasive brush, which then gets under your paintwork and damages it, which then enables the spirits to go underneath and split the paint. So as long as you're gentle in your application and careful, you are not going to wreck your paintwork with this technique. So there we go, it's applied rather messily, it's looking a bit shambolic, it's really ruined our whites, but that's fine because we're going to take the worst of that off now with some sponge and spirits. So the sponge has been really, really lightly moistened with some white spirits. We're going to apply this in strokes downwards to remove any excess that it gathers at the bottom and then collects in our sponge and takes it away, but also for any streaks that remain in a downward motion, it looks more natural, like gravity has brought rain and mud and muck downwards in streaks. Again, helping us do what we want to do with having a really cool worn Dreadnought. So we don't want to do too much of this. If it's ringed wet with white spirits, we're going to undo all the oils we've done, and that's where you're likely to have any issues with paint coming away, especially if you're using a stiff sponge. This sponge is very, very soft. If you use too little, you're not going to do enough, and you're just going to move it around and keep your Dreadnought all stained and minky. So the right amount will mean that you keep it in the recesses, but remove any blemishes or stains or splodges over the flat surface areas that you want to keep relatively clean. We don't mind a bit of tinting on our white. That's good, that's realistic. White never stays white for long, especially on a battlefield. But the last thing we want to do is have it turn brown. You should do this once you've left your oils to dry for about an hour. Again, on a hot day they'll dry a little bit quicker. I find leaving them outside, the fresh air and the wind helps the spirits dissipate a lot quicker. You can do this in steps and apply more oils and take them away, more oils, do them away. It's entirely up to you, but I find the less paint you use, the less time you're fannying about, the better. There we go. Right, we're going in with our burnt sienna and we're going to apply some nice streaks. So we're going to load our scratty old brush up with some neat oil paint. I'm going to apply this in splodges in random bits along the armour. These will form our rusty streaks. You can use stuff like AK Interactive's Rust Streaks, it's great. This is nice. It's a little bit more concentrated and a little bit, probably a little bit easier to apply because it's a lot easier to take this away and apply it back on. It's a lot more concentrated, whereas the rust streaks can be quite soft. You have to build it up and have a good amount on there. Find what works for you. The oil's great because if you've already got it for oil washes, you can try it now. Rust streaks is good to have just in general. You'll find what works for you. Each person has a different way of doing it and how they prefer to do it. So give it a go. You might find something new that you absolutely enjoy and helps inspire you to do more painting. So we've got those splodges on there. Lovely. Just going to apply a few more. We're then going to get another Scatio brush, damp with spirits, not sodden but damp, and run those downwards. You'll see we get a really nice, vibrant, orangey, rusty brown streak. Rusty brown streak. Now, this is nice because you can take it, like, if you've got too much on there, you can go, cool, I'm just going to take it all away with some white spirits and a sponge. You can neat off with a brush here, like I'm doing, to get a really nice, more concentrated line. Again, if you don't like it, cool, take it away with some sponge and spirit, do it again. And in theory, it's very, very easy. In practice, it's very hard to do authentically where it looks absolutely natural as you'd want it to. For every 5 I try, one of those will be like, oh my god, that's fucking amazing, I need to do that again. And I won't. I'll get it wrong from there onwards. So it's continuous applications, keep trying. Eventually you'll find how to do it and the right brush to use and the right amount of spirits to use and the right amount of oil blobs to use to the point where you'll be able to run these off no problem. I'll let you know when I get there. Again, even the weakest amount of this oil will just leave a little tint and a little filter over the streak where you've left it, which again is fine. It's semi-realistic and another point of interest on our blue. There you go. I think I'm happy with that. Right, time to matte this bad boy down. So he's still very, very glossy and shiny, which is going to distort the finish we want and the colours and how they read to whoever's looking at it. So we're going to apply some light passes of this Mecha matte varnish through our airbrush. If you've got a spray can of matte varnish, Colourforge do one that's pretty good. Apply that. If you've got dull coat, personal preference, whatever you like. So we're going to apply this all over, make sure we lose all that gloss, seal in everything that we put down, and get a nice flat finish across our transfers, our paint, and our weathering. Remember, light passes, you don't want to splodge this on so it pulls and leaves big white gooey mess. Ooh, it's all gooey. You want to do in light passes so it hits, starts to dry, go back and do a few more. And there we have, that's the exact finish I love on my Dreadnoughts and on my Knights. I think it looks absolutely dope. The next step now is to fill in all those metallic areas, which again breaks up the texture and instantly balances all that blue. The base is blue, the whole model's blue, the weapons are blue. Time to bring it down to make it look a little bit more as we need it to. What a handsome little boy. Still quite glossy on the back. I'm probably going to hit that again with some more varnish. Again, do lots of little passes, don't just blast it because you'll get horrible nasty finishes and white streaks. Dark silver, one of my go-to metallics. Pro Acryl, 10 out of 10, love them, mad lads. We're going to use a relatively big brush for this and just apply this onto all the areas we want to be metallic. We're going to watch the blue that we've done. We are going to be aware that we don't want to get this on there. If we get a bit on there, it's fine, it's a little bit of metallic damage, but we are going to be neat where it counts to make sure we don't go mad with this. But there is a lot of area to cover here. That said, not that much. I think it probably takes me about 25 minutes to paint all the metallics on a Dreadnought now. When I was painting this area though, I noticed all the rust around the exhaust stacks and those armor panels on the back. And I remember being inspired by thinking, what area on a motor vehicle sees the most wear and tear, gets the most corroded and gets the most fucked up? And it's the exhaust. It makes sense that areas around the exhaust, which is often in the undercarriage of a car or a van or whatever, gets worn, gets corroded, gets rusty, needs replacing. So those armor panels are going to get covered in soot and crud and muck and whatever the hell those stacks are pumping out. So I really wanted to make a point of weathering those up nicely to reflect that. Real world inspiration, it's good even for a fantasy universe. Whatever inspires you to pick up that brush, run with it and love it. That's what I do, and I paint every day, and I'm very fucking grateful for that I can do that. So there we go, we've painted all our weapons, painted the missile arm. All the metallic components of the Dreadnought should be painted now. I'm not too worried about the inside of that because no one's going to see it. And here we go. These are all the bits I register as being metallic for a Dreadnought. I know the GW examples, there's a lot more blue on there, which is fine. It's less work for us to do, but I like a little bit more metallic to balance it out a little bit more, personally speaking. Protocol Bronze, we're going to do this on the exhaust stacks and the kind of reactor housing on the back of the Dreadnought and the ribbed cables. This is all season's taste and personal preference. You can apply this on whatever you want. It's entirely up to you. Any more colours at this point are just for a point of interest. You don't want to overdo it, but a few little spot colours like this, bronze and stuff, are going to help out in making it look just that little bit more appealing. If you want to use some Citadel alternatives, you can use Warblock Bronze or Balthazar Gold, or they got a new one that's really like Timbits. What's it called? Castellax Bronze, that's it. That's a fucking great colour. Get that one. That's a really nice reflective bronze of this, and Timbits from the old days. Easily one of my favourite metallics from Citadel. Light Bronze, one of my all-time favourite paints ever. It's one of my go-tos for most projects. We're going to use this on the Aquila and all the gold details we want to, again, add another colour, a point of interest, and to give it a little bit more blemish and a little bit more sparkle. He's a revered ancient brother of the 13th chapter Astartes. The boys in blue, the McCrag Maniacs. Yeah, bloody Ultramarines, innit? So we've got this lovely Aquila on the front and that little kind of crux thing on his left chest panel. Any other bits you think might look good with this colour, crack the heck on. We've also got the trim of the central sarcophagus column, which makes sense to be this colour as well. I love this kit. I love that it's like 15, 16 bits. It's easy build, which I don't have a problem with. Trim the pegs off and it goes together great. It would be nice if we had a little bit more ability to get to that inside that sarcophagus column central proper, but we'll deal with it. Up next, we've got some burnt red. When you do some of those cables on there, you could fanny about with this and do some hazard stripes or some different colours and some European wiring collaboration colours. Entirely up to you, personal taste. I'm just going to do a couple of burnt red ones here to throw another colour in there and a little bit of a point of interest. One of my heroes, Brown Wash from Pro Acryl. Chuck away your Agrax and get this instead. We're going to apply this to our purity seals, wax and all, to our gold areas, our bronze areas, anywhere that's not silver basically, silver or blue we're going to apply this paint onto. It's great, it's a non-glossy finish, it flows beautifully, it shades without completely changing the colour hues of everything it touches. 10 out of 10, we'll brown wash again. Now I did think I'd changed my mind at this point, decided I'm going to wash the exhaust stacks on the top with black instead of brown for a more sooty, dark finish. Again, personal preference, season to taste, whatever floats your boat and gets your goat. Warm Yeller. Pro Acryl once again. I'm going to do this just to highlight those missiles, just in case we've got any oil wash on there or any blemishes. We could use this to bring them out a little bit and warm them up. Yellow missiles are cool. I don't know why I chose yellow. I think it's because it's a colour I'm synonymous with missiles, probably a real world influence. They could be white, they could be red, they could be like a pale blue, whatever you want them to be. Again, you can look at real world research and see what military uses colour coded missiles for what job, for anti-infantry, anti-armour, anti-air, blah blah blah. Nerd nonsense, whatever you want to do. Pewter from Darkstar, one of their lovely metallics. I am going to dry brush this on something, but what? The metal skeleton. I'm going to apply this all over the metal skeleton just to bring it out that little bit. I normally use MIG's Light Silver, but a friend of mine, Mark, in the Discord, who's an absolute G, tried dry brushing with the Darkstar, and I've never done it before, wanted to give it a try. And he recommended it, and it's nice. It brings it up just a little bit and adds that little bit more of a silver sheen to this kind of dark silver that we've got. You could up it if you wanted to, but I don't want to detract too much from the armor. I want the armor to be the focal point, so having a luminous silver metallic on there wouldn't be what I want. So it's all about balance and measuring. Again, informed choices as we paint. I'll never be one of these people who has a planned regimen for painting something of this colour, then that step, then this colour, then that step. I'll have a general idea of the process, so like with this, with the non-metallics, weathering, oils, matte varnish, metallics, but that's normally as specific as I go. From there, I'll vary the colours unless I'm doing something for a project. I'll try something new. If I see a product that I want to give a go, I'll take that for a spin. I'll look for a one-off mini that I can use that on to then try it. It's an experience. It's a tangible... That's my printer telling me it's done. My burrito! It's a tangible experience, and you should never be afraid to try new things. We learn by doing, so the more you paint, the more you get. Every time you pick up the brush, you improve. I also tickled the gold elements with this as well, just to kind of dust them up a little bit, and it did look great on that. It looked really, really nice. It just lifted that gold up to an almost silvery finish, which I really, really liked. Again, all the weapons. I think I did some of the bronze cabling as well with this, just to brighten it up just a touch. Tickle, tickle, tickle. I do need to drill out those last gun barrels. I'm a bugger for doing it at the end. Coal black, Pro Acryl. We're going to use this for any black details we want to finish off. So things like the lip of the missile launcher, I'm going to paint black now. I didn't do this earlier because I probably didn't decide it was going to be black at that point. Again, we learn as we go. There's nothing stopping us from touching something up later if we need to. I also decided to paint the housing of the combi / storm bolters to be black because I love a black gun casing. I probably could have done this on the las cannon housing on the arm, but decided against it because I did. It's one of them, isn't it? So the casing of the storm bolters and any non-ribbed cables or anything that looks external or plugged into the skeleton of the armor, you could probably do black. It's a safe bet. And then, of course, not forgetting the barrel ends of the las cannons, which are always black because they always have been, and that's how they always will be for me. Deal with it. Iraqi Army Sand. I'm going to use this to highlight our purity seals just to bring them up again. So you'll notice I'm highlighting these in a traditional kind of sharp edge highlight sense, maybe some chunky highlights. I've not done this on anything else, and there's a reason for that. First off, it's a pain in the arse and I don't like doing it. Second of all, it differentiates textures, so these look different compared to the armor. If I edge highlighted the blue armor with that faded ultramarine entirely all over, as I'm doing with these now, they would look like the same material, just a different color. So applying differential highlights and finishes to what you're painting helps to determine it being a different texture. So I'll tend to highlight more non-metallic elements, things like clothing, fabrics, paper, as you can see here, than I would armor. But again, it depends on light sources, inspiration, the finish you want to go for. Me personally, I like my scuffed metals, my scuffed armor, and my highlighted fabrics materials. Because again, it's nice, it's easy to do, it's good practice, it keeps me fresh, but it also differentiates those textures a little bit more for me and gives me the finish that I love. Bow Pyro Red. I'm going to use this to highlight our wax seals again. That one's still very, very bright. I'll probably do a knocking out back a little bit, but fudge it, we're here. Again, this throws back to the old school Black Reach days and the old school Space Marine artwork and the box art where most of the colours are luminous and the reds are vibrant scarlet and the blues are cobalt. I just bloody love it. I'm a creature of habit and I enjoy it. Once again, doing this to non-organic, non-metallic materials that I wouldn't do on my metallics and on my armor panels to differentiate textures, to make them look more interesting, excuse me, and to, because I want to, simple as. Warm Grey from Pro Acryl. We are going to use this to highlight our black. Now, again, this differentiates that material from being different to the metals and the armor. This could be an alloy of some kind, or maybe a carbonite casing that reflects light differently, and again, Gets replaced by the Tet Marine regularly because it's damaged or fires, becomes out of operation. Can't have a Dreadnought firing blanks at his age. Replace it, get something new and shiny in there. So that makes for the differentiation in the degrees of damage and wear and neatness and highlights across the armour to the weapon. If that makes any sense, am I waffling? Leave a comment, berate me. For all my berating and hatred of edge highlighting, I do absolutely adore doing this on such a sharp angle. And again, it just looks very, very old school and nice. Really nice and punchy. If I overdo it, I'll wipe it away with my dinger. There we go. Bright Ivory from Pro Acryl. We are going to do this on the lenses, ready for a little bit of contrast in a bit. So no science of finesse. Dot those lenses, get a nice bright colour on there. Any bright bone or bright white will do if you have a personal preference. I find a warmer colour is better to give a warm light, warm glowy effect. There's a lot of different lenses on this guy that could be several different colours. I don't want him to look like a Christmas tree. Most of them are probably going to be red. So again, dotting all those lenses, do a couple of layers to build this up to a nice solid colour. So that brother Darius can have some nice flashy glowy lights to impress the girls with. Bad Moon Yellow. Contrast. He's got some kind of flashlight, searchlight doohickey on him, which is going to paint that with this, because it's nice and bright and looks nice, and it's a different yellow to the missiles, because again, I want them to be different colours. There we go, that'll do. Blood Angel's red contrast. We're going to do this for the other lenses. If it's a weapon lens, it's got to be red. I don't make the rules, except probably in this Patreon I do. All lenses must be red. Be as neat as you can. Don't worry if you get it on the metal. You can just dot over it later with some more metallics. I do bloody love a red lens. You can go back and highlight these as you want. You can add a dot of orange or a dot of white just to make them punch up a little bit more. I'm not, because I don't like doing that. We're back with the oil paints, guys. We've got some lamp black. Now, that oil you see there is exactly the same as I used earlier. All I did was mix some black into it. You don't need a lot for it to turn almost completely black. The brown and the sienna we had in it earlier is going to give it a slightly earthier tone, but the black is going to knock it right down. I'm going to paint this all over the metallics that we've painted up to now. So we're doing this after we've highlighted it up because we want to round it all in with a nice metallic oily finish. We want the focal point to be the armour. If we spend too much time getting the skeleton looking bright and exuberant and super shiny, sparkly, glowy, it's going to detract away from our armour, and I feel like the silver needed to be knocked down just a little bit. Oil washers are nice, cheap, easy to use, and we don't have to worry about protecting the surface because all this paint's dry, so we're going to apply it gently in good measure just over all those silver metallics and the bronze details as well. Not forgetting to apply this to the weapons as well that we've done. And then for good measure, I'm going to put mine on the inside of the missile firings as well. Because why not? Burnt Sienna. This is our final step for big bad boy Darius? Big D-Dog? Big D-Dog. We're going to thin this down with a shed load of water so it becomes almost like a shade. I'm going to do some little subtle weathering streaks in here into those recesses. So think about where it's going to pool and settle. It's going to run down his sarcophagus and settle on the underside of armor panels, where water and mud's going to get blown up him as he's walloping treacherous heretic foes to death. All that blood, muck and gore and the mud and soil is going to gather in there and rust and turn horrible. Ugh. So we're going to apply this gently and sparingly into those little areas. And it's just a really nice little interesting colour. And it's going to do a world of good just to add that little bit of interest and that little bit of enhanced depth and weathering. It's also going to tie it into our base, which I've decided, because the client said I've got free reign over it and I'm very inspired by Black Reach, I'm going to go for an old school Games Workshop, mud, stone, grass. So traditional brown, some nice bright green grass and some tufts. And just have a really nice throwback to those simpler years of sitting in Games Workshop Derby, trading Space Marines for orcs, and then going home and realising the kid didn't give me the bases and I never saw him again. Oh, tragic. Now, as with all weathering, less is more with this. Around a few rivets isn't going to hurt. It looks particularly nice on the white, but again, we don't want to turn the whole thing orange. This is a really nice alternative to the oil streaks we did earlier, or the rust streaks we didn't do. So you could just apply this in acrylics with dots in the armour, run it down with your finger or a brush, and you get basically the same result with a lot less faff. I just like oils because I feel like they add another point of interest, another technique, and another skill to miniature painting. So again, I'm going to do this there and I'm going to call it because I don't want to overpower this and do too much. And here he is all based up. What an absolute bad lad and a G. I still need to drill out those barrels for his last cannons, but I'll do that later. Here we go. There is my techniques on painting Dreadnoughts, in particular this Ultramarines Ballistas Dreadnought. What did you think? Anything in this video you're going to use when you paint your Dreadnoughts? What did you like? What do you want to challenge? What do you think could be done better? What do you want to see in the next video? Regardless, thank you very much for your support. It means the world to me. I'm gradually growing in subscribers, which enables me to do more and more content. I've done 2 huge videos this week. I've got a third one to do, which I'm going to desperately try and crack out over the weekend, once I beg my missus if I can have an hour in the shed. Alternatively, get in the Discord, shout what more content you'd like to see. If there's anything new you want me to try, I'd love to do it. Gaming content is on the way, I promise. We are looking at getting started soon. Exactly what it's going to start with, you'll just have to wait and see. It's all very exciting. Until then, guys, thank you for watching. Comment, like, subscribe, cringy social media nonsense, nothing but love. Have a lovely day. Peace!